Without a great product manager, you cannot be successful. If you have someone leading the company that just comes from the execution side of things, of software delivery, you will fail because the product management part is the key part that you need. And a VC won't fund a company that doesn't have a strong product manager as a founder or co-founder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast, part of Facing Disruption's Rockstar Product Team series, where we are going to dive into the future of defense software and why product management talent is critical for success. I am really excited today to have Andrew Park join us. He is a leader passionate about bridging the gap between engineering and user needs, as well as products. So this is also a topic that I spend a lot of time thinking about, talking about. I'm excited for this. So he is both an engineer, a product leader. He is the founder of Edensoft Labs, and we'll get into that a little later. And his expertise helps shape mission-ready solutions. So I will let you provide more color on your background and what you're doing, and then we'll get into the conversation.
All right, sure. Well, I started my career after getting my degrees in electrical engineering. So I had electrical engineering education. And pretty soon after I started work, I realized that it was very valuable to learn how to code. So I had to gain computer science skills on the job. I really went after it and learned a lot about computer science, read a lot of things. And as you can see in the background, I've read a lot. And so that has helped me to be able to gain perspective on the computer science field that I think I could not have had before, because coming in with an electrical engineering degree, it was really helpful because I was able to see that the way that people construct and build software in the computer science world is actually in a very undisciplined way, typically. And the bottom-up design philosophy that they have really falls apart when it comes to large, complex software. And so that's one of the things that I'm writing about to help people from the engineering craftsmanship side. But then another topic that we're going to be talking much more about is product management. So in the early years of my career, I'd say probably the first 8 years of my career, I had a couple experiences that were very negative. One of the things that I invented, an algorithm that I invented that actually got published in the best electrical engineering journals out there, IEEE Transactions on Communications. I was lauded by my boss as, having accomplished something. But then an engineer in industry told me that it was completely impractical, that it would add $5,000 to each bill of materials of a tactical radio. And so that made it not really interesting at all. And that's when I decided to quit and not go after my PhD, go into industry. And then I had another experience that was very disappointing, where I worked very hard, 9 months, on a seemingly very, very cool product. It was basically something that we took one of the company's products and miniaturized it. It was like this nice, tiny little form factor that was about the size of a cigarette pack, and took a lot of cool engineering to do that. And I was the lead engineer there. And when we delivered it, we found out that no one wanted it, because when operators saw it, they were like, no thanks, this does not meet my requirements of how I want to run my missions. And so that was hugely disappointing. And it was those two events that made me realize that all of my efforts to become a great engineer and a great computer scientist were not enough. That I could do my job perfectly, I could do my designs great, I could do my code great, but it still ends up not impacting the world. And so that's when I really decided I needed to learn what is now called product management skills. And so that was around 2004. that I really got into product management. And since then, I've applied product management techniques on multiple product lines successfully. And now that I am not leading a whole bunch of product teams, I am trying to get the word out, especially to DoD leaders, that the number one thing that they need to focus on right now is to acquire and cultivate product management talent within the defense industrial base. And that's the thing that they're really missing.
I love that. And I really enjoy the shots fired, what you said, engineering in an undisciplined way. And I gotta say, I think we're gonna take a lot of shots at some of the current methodologies and approaches that we see today. So, to the engineers out there, of course, you're gonna take it with a grain of salt, but there's something to learn about it. And this is, back to, my days of leading and coaching and mentoring engineering teams, as well as being an engineer myself. One of the things that I'm seeing more and more is that it's not enough to be a good engineer anymore. You need to start thinking as a product owner, a product leader. So let's take a moment to just define those different personas, right? We have the engineers. I think that one is pretty easy to define. They're the builders, right? But one of the things I heard you slip in project management and then product management. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between those things, the skills that are required, and then we'll get into how that relates with some of the other things that have been put onto engineering teams, such as Scrum Masters and Agile coaches and things like that. But let's start with project, product. What are we talking here? What's the difference between that?
There's a very big difference. There's a very big difference in focus. So this is one of the things that I'm actually trying to get in touch with thought leaders at PMI, Project Management Institute, to help them to try to encourage them to really incorporate a lot more product level thinking in all their training. And I think that in the agile world, in the software world, there's usually a lot of animosity between the development world and project managers. And one of the big reasons why is because traditional project management does not work well in software that's complex. It just hasn't. There's tons of evidence of that. If teams talk a lot about technical debt, that's what I'm talking about. Things are not going that great. And in every other engineering field, it's not so messy. There's not so much backtracking. There's not so much angst. There's not so much negative surprises of schedules being blown out into the future. In software, this happens all the time. And part of the reason why, one of the biggest reasons why, is that organizations have not realized that what's really missing is getting requirements discovery just nailed. And so that is really the job of the product manager. And when you talk about product managers versus product owners versus project managers, there's usually this kind of spectrum of how much is this person equipped to handle really nailing the requirements. Like, what product should we build? Should we even build that product or not? Right? That's huge. And then after you decided like, oh, I think that we found a good product idea. Okay, now what are the requirements for that product? Putting the effort and having the talent to be able to discover those things really well and completely, that's hard to do. And it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of talent. You have to be, it's really helpful to be trained to get the talent to do this. And there are organizations out there that offer training, but there's not enough investment into that, and especially not by the DoD. The product management trend or movement has really dominated on the West Coast USA. almost every tech company there that's doing software is doing product management and really leaning hard into it. But then when you come across to the East Coast USA, well, the government and defense work, it's like you hardly see it at all. I mean, it's really hard to see it. But I'll tell you some companies that do it and do it well. Anduril, Palantir, Shield AI, Rise 8. And there's not a lot. There's just not a lot. And
These sound like Silicon Valley companies, though, that are just based here.
Well, the reason why is because Silicon Valley venture capitalists know what I'm telling you. Without a great product manager, you cannot be successful. If you have someone leading the company that just comes from the execution side of things, of software delivery, you will fail, because the product management part is the key part that you need. And a VC won't fund a company that doesn't have a strong product manager as a founder or co-founder. So they've learned their lessons a long time ago. That's why Silicon Valley defense startups, they always have a product management culture. That's why. And I'm really just trying to get the message out to defense leaders. Anyone who's an 06 or an 05, and you're running a complex development project with a bunch of teams, you're probably experiencing tons of pain. And of course, there's many things to fix. It's not just product management, but this is the number one thing to look into. That's the first thing you should look into.
So in an article that you sent me, and I'll link that down in the comments, you talked about the requirements gap, and you just now mentioned the importance of a product manager, product owner, to be able to get deep into the requirements. And that is a specific skill set that you need to learn. Let's talk a little bit about where are these requirements coming from? What is the skill set and behaviors that you need to begin to learn and exhibit? And then what does that look like after you've already gotten the initial requirements?
Right. It's a good question. There's a lot of things to answer in there. So I would say that there are some very popular seminal books out there on product management, and there's a variety of thinkers out there. So the best known one by far is Marty Kagan. So if there is a Michael Jordan of product management today, it's Marty Kagan. And there are multiple books that he's written. My favorite one is his first one, Inspired, because when I read Inspired, it was after I had been doing product management for many years. And after I read it, I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy is describing a lot of the things that through experience I've come to do these things, and I know that it works. And he articulates it really well and really clearly. He's got a gift at articulation. And later on, when we talk about, the 5 risks of product risks, the first 4 are from Kagan. His books, his things that he says all the time. And I added the 5th one, sustainability risk, because for the DoD audience, that's something that it's just really, really, really top of mind. I mean, anybody at the commander or captain or colonel or admiral or general level, they talk about that term all the time. It is top of mind. And so it needs to be top of mind for DoD product managers. And so that's why I broke it out as a 5th thing. And I did actually run this article by Marty Kagan before I published it. And he told me that he would have put sustainability risk in as part of viability risk. That's the way he thinks of it. But he wasn't offended that I added it broke it out as a separate thing. But I do want to give credit to Kagan for coming up with those first 4, and they're just so brilliantly simple. But there's other teachers out there too. I think that Teresa Torres, she wrote a book on continuous discovery habits. And I think that that applies to a wide variety of DoD type of product developments. And that's something that I definitely, would advise clients that they really try to implement a lot of those ideas. And then there's also Roman Pitchler, who has a different take. His framework is quite different actually from Kagan, and where I really like seeing it. I would like to see Pitchler's ideas and his tools. He has these nice worksheets and little tools that are like artifacts that you can fill in, and it can be shared across many different people. So I think that that is something that can be very helpful for large defense developments. And so there's a variety of thinkers out there. I just mentioned 3 of my favorite ones, but there is a lot of knowledge that has already been published that people could get trained on and start trying to apply these ideas and get better results.
Yeah. And what are some of those ideas? And we'll get into the risks that you talked about later in the conversation, but what are some of those ideas and frameworks?
Yeah. All of the teachers on product management, one thing that they will have in common is that there will be a lot of talk about discovery, as they call it. In my writings, I like to call it requirements discovery, just so that it connects more with PMOs and their world, and more with these leaders. And when product managers talk about discovery, it's usually on 2 levels. It's first, it's on a product level. What product should we make, and should we even make it? You got to know that before you develop a lot of code. You should be very good at eliminating as many ideas as possible before you waste tons of money. And now once you decide to create something, all right, so now let's say the DoD decided they want the F-47. They want this F-47. They want someone to build it for them. And they're going to interview different contractors. And they chose Boeing. Okay, great. Now that you've already committed that you're going to do this, you better make sure that Boeing has the talent in place to be able to discover all the requirements for this thing that you've already decided to make. All right, so there's first the product level discovery. And then once you've committed to we're going to make this product, then there's a ton of work to be able to discover the requirements of that complex product. So those are the things that are really, really, really necessary to get done up front. And once you have a clear idea of what you're going to make, and you've done a lot of work on the discovery of the requirements, then you could start really understanding your strategy. What's this product strategy for how we're going to actually realize this and bring this to bear and get it to warfighters?
So, discovery, what are some of the things that make up good, thorough discovery? Because I've seen different angles of it, and a number of times the discovery I've seen has been, let's go into a room and put our heads down and come up with a PRD. That doesn't sound like discovery to me. So what does good discovery, great discovery look like?
Yeah, I think that what you said there could be something that could be a very beginning stage of discovery, but you haven't discovered everything until you validated it. So then, okay, you've got all these people in a room and you came up with a PRD and everyone in the room kind of likes it. All right, well, what do you do then? You need to go validate that. And so now that product manager or product managers have to go and get this in front of a whole bunch of people that can kind of represent who the end users might be of this, and validate or invalidate portions or the entirety of that PRD. And so that is a lot of work. It requires a lot of skills. It requires a lot of human networking skills. And if somebody doesn't have those skills, there's no way they're going to be able to be a good product manager. So this is where I talk about talent. You need to have sufficiently talented people. It's not just about telling them to follow a process. Like in Scrum, there's process. In Agile, there's a lot of process, right? In Safe, there's a ton of process, way too much. But you can train people about how to carry out process. But when it comes to product management, do you have the people talents to be able to accomplish this? Do you have the knowledge to be able to know how to interpret what you're hearing? Because when you talk to end users, if you just believe everything they say and then you put that on the roadmap and implement it, you know what's going to happen? You're going to come out with probably some really crappy products, because product management and discovery is not that easy. All right. Mm-hmm. It's like, Henry Ford has this famous saying where he said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me faster horses. He was a product manager. All right. So he probably knew a lot of people that told him, you need a really fast horse. I need a horse that could go like really 3 times the distance in one day. That's what I really want. And it'd be nice if the horse didn't eat as much and, whatever. Right. And so, but in his mind, he didn't say, okay, how do I put that on the roadmap and create a better horse? Mm-hmm. He was a real product manager. And he was like, there is emerging technology, motors. Not everyone knows about it, but I do. And you know what? I think I can think of a different way of taking emerging technology and creating a much better solution to what's really wanted. And that's what great product managers do. Mm-hmm. So, great product managers have to have access to knowledge of what is possible with emerging technology. That's what Henry Ford did. Motors were a brand new thing back then. The Industrial Revolution was a brand new thing. Making a factory was a brand new thing. Mm-hmm. And the vision of putting together an assembly line and teaching humans how to do, a scoped task so they could do it very fast and efficiently. All of those ideas came together in order to bring disruptive innovation. Mm-hmm. And that's what's needed in the defense world. We don't have enough people that do that. Mm-hmm. When you have limited, when you have certain companies that do that, like Anduril, everyone I hear that talks about Anduril from an 05 level and up right now, they're just like blown away. They're just like, wow, they're doing it right. Yeah. You know how they do it right? They got lots of good product management, because their major investors, those venture capitalists, would never fund a company without knowing that they have that in place.
Yeah, I really like your example with Henry Ford, because I think it's a really good illustration of somebody who talked to customers, heard what they said. I need a faster horse, right? And yes. Amazon calls this finding the durable customer need, right? The real thing that they're saying is I need to get from point A to point B quickly and efficiently, right? Yeah. That's the challenge. Now you're free to solve the challenge anyway. And this is what I'm hearing from you, right? This is when I think of, what does discovery mean? It's looking between the lines. Yeah. Right? Because they're going to say, oh, I need, you mentioned the F-47, right? I need this new plane, right? And it has to have these requirements. This is, okay, why? Right? Oh, stealth radar. Radar is getting more effective and stealth isn't working. Oh, this is a problem. We need to solve for that. Right? You're figuring out the actual problems that need to be solved. So You mentioned Agile, and you mentioned a number of times coming up with detailed requirements beforehand. So that feels a little waterfall-y. So let's talk about that, right? Are we talking about waterfall? Are we talking about a hybrid? Where does agile fall apart in this?
Yeah. I am not advocating waterfall. I don't think anybody would do that. But I am criticizing the bottom-up approach that Agile and Scrum have very much popularized. DevSecOps is in there too. And so there is this real commitment to the idea that the way that you build software, whether big or small, is through quick iterations. And so there's that assumption that underlies what Agile and Scrum and DevSecOps has been built upon. It's that very assumption that actually is often flawed. Not always, but often flawed. And so there's a philosophical problem there. And what it goes back to, if you go back to the early books on Scrum, Ken Sutherland was an Air Force pilot. And so he lays down some of the core thinking that led to this, which is basically that an Air Force pilot is dealing with complexity and things are coming fast. You can't plan for whether you're going to veer right or left or whether you're going to switch the cannons or guns, or it's like, no, you observe and then you react. Okay. And so that was the framework of when you are dealing with complexity and you're not sure what to do, you really observe and then you react to it. And so that became almost an assumption of how Agile and Scrum and DevOps were formulated. But in reality, it's not really true. Okay? That is true if your engineering team and your product team is facing something that they have never done before, and it's the task is really beyond what they are comfortable with. All right, they're not in their comfort zone. They're not even in their learning zone. They're flirting with a panic zone. Okay, and when you're doing that, then that philosophy totally makes sense. And so there's something called the Cynefin framework. And so there's been this assumption that software is always in the complex domain, and it's not. When you actually have very good product managers that are very knowledgeable, and you have very good software architects, like really good, strong tech leads, then what happens is that what is assumed to be in the complex domain usually is not. It could actually be in the complicated or even the obvious domain. And so it's really something that depends on the team that approaches it. You could have a team, like if I took some of our best engineers in our company and I put them on some new product development, maybe I would say typically maybe 20% of it is in the complex domain, and maybe 30% of it is in the complicated domain, and 30% of it is actually in the obvious domain. Whereas if I took new hires and put them at it, then yeah, it would be all in the complex domain and they should do Agile and Scrum and DevOps. All right, so it's really contextual.
Yeah, real quick on the complex and complicated, because I really like that framework, right? Something can be complex but not complicated. It can be complicated but not complex. So when we say complicated and complex, what do we mean?
Well, I'm referring to the definitions from the Cynefin framework. And so I can send you some slides and you could even show them here when you publish this if you want. So I have some materials that describe what I'm talking about and how software work can be shifted to out of the complex domain where it's like, oh gosh, this is really a big hairy thing that we're doing and we're not sure how to do this. So we just got to do increments. Let's just do increments and we'll inch our way toward hopefully a good solution. It's very inefficient to do that. It also creates a lot of technical debt. You create a lot of architectural level technical debt versus if you had a great architect that could actually see a lot of the software in just the obvious or complex domain and then they can create something much, much quicker and something with much, much less architectural technical debt. So it can be a night and day difference. And that's why what I really try to teach on the engineering side is that the thing that matters, it begins and ends with talent. You need to develop and retain great engineering talent. And that doesn't change in the age of AI, by the way, that it becomes something that needs to be more pervasive across your engineering team, that they have very strong design skills at the large scale.
Yeah, and I want to get into how is AI affecting that as we're moving into, move faster, deliver more. Our bandwidth is becoming increasingly limited, but the expectations are going up. So, where do you see AI playing a role? Is it making this process better, or is it accelerating slop?
Both.
Yeah.
Depends on whose hands it's in.
That's another shot we're going to take, AI slop.
Yeah. I've got a lot of thoughts on AI because I'm an early adopter of anything that's transformative technology. And so I've worn the hat of engineering VP and product manager simultaneously for 2 decades. And so with my engineering VP hat, it's my job to know when there's a transformative technology and then to lean our team heavily into it as soon as possible. So we did that with AI. So yeah, I can talk a lot about that. I see a lot of people out there that seem to be very, very excited about the capability of AI to write code, especially things like Bolt and Lovable, that where you can create an application out of a series of prompts. And that is a game-changing thing. I mean, we use that all the time, by the way. Okay, we use, first of all, we use the best AI coding tool all the time. I love Bolt. We love Cursor. We think Cursor is better than GitHub Copilot right now, but it's okay if you use a Copilot. It's just like Ford and Chevy, okay? I think Ford's got a better truck. All right, it can be debatable. You can be totally successful with GitHub Copilot or something similar to that. So where this really changes the game is AI allows every person on the product team, whether you're a product manager or you're a designer or you're an engineer or you're a QA person, whoever you are, it allows you to actually not just play the role that you were trained in, it allows you to expand your impact to add contributions in other roles too. So one way that I like to talk about this is that AI allows us as humans, and this is not just in product development, this is humans worldwide in every profession, to become multi-capable. And so that is the promise that AI has been able to deliver on. And, I'm multi-capable now, and so are people that work for me because I force that. And really smart leaders and CEOs, they are forcing it on their people. They're basically telling them, I'm compelling you to become multi-capable. And I can hear people, complaining about that and thinking that's unreasonable. It's not. If you have a CEO that's doing that, they are doing you a favor. It's like when your mom used to tell you, you need to eat your vegetables. You need to take your vitamins. You need to dress appropriately for the weather. They're trying to help you preserve your career. That's why I force it on my people. It's for their own good. Because if we don't become multi-capable humans, we will be obsolete. We will. It's the worst time ever to go be in college and graduate with a degree. We're going to have the highest unemployment rate of young people in our country, in the history of our country. And this is very predictable because our education system is producing people with one capability. And companies will need and demand humans that are multi-capable. So whether you're working now or you're in school, you better have a plan to be multi-capable.
This is why I've gotten into many debates about the importance of taking electives as part of your degree. And it pains me how many people joke about electives are a waste of time. Oh, that arts, the classes around philosophy and all this stuff is irrelevant. I don't want to take it. I just want to take gym and get an easy A. And you're doing a disservice to yourself. That's one. And two, it's also your responsibility as a performer to link those things together. I always say I learned more about engineering from my philosophy classes than I did from my engineering classes, right? Because engineering was the building of it. It was the very tactical hands-on. Philosophy taught me how to think and question and work through these fallacies and really understand what is it you're actually trying to do, right? The building I could build. Now we have AI tools build. It's all about, can you communicate those requirements back? And I think this leads really well into the critical risks that you were talking about, right? You mentioned that there were 5, sustainability being one of them, but let's get into those risks that product managers are really responsible for owning and navigating around.
Yes.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Okay.
You're 5.
Yeah. So you've got the 4 things that Marty Kagan has been harping on for years, which are value, viability, usability, and feasibility. And then I broke out of viability, sustainability. I'm talking about highly sustainable code. And so I want to tell DoD leaders that these are the 5 things to really measure how well are you getting this done, right? Are you going to conference room demos and your teams are showing you stuff that looks reasonable to you, but then as soon as you show it to a real operator, a real pilot, a real special forces operator, that they like panic and they say, no, they're not going to use that. No way. Why'd you guys do this? That is so common. That is so common. And this has been happening throughout my entire career. I've been in the defense arena since 1998. Okay, so I've been in the game a long time. And this is almost universal when it comes to the defense industrial base. And it's something that we've been able to avoid because I went very hard after learning how to do product management. And because I really wanted to create products that my customers loved, that had real world impact. And we were able to do it. And that's why I'm trying to share this, because now I want the entire defense industrial base to really be able to be leveled up, because now is more important than ever. Our platforms, whether it's the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, all of the platforms that we have, air, sea, land, they are not well suited for the great power competition that they need to be. And I think that at the top levels, even from the White House and the Defense Secretary Hegseth, they are really communicating the alarm about the need for modernization. But the problem, AJ, is that modernization doesn't have a hope of happening without really great product management talent being cultivated and acquired and cultivated within the defense industrial base. So that's the alarm I'm trying to raise to DoD leaders.
And this gets into another point that you made in the article. Where is traditional acquisition in the defense space failing? Because my impression was the acquisition pipeline, or these PMOs are really great at coming up with huge requirements that basically lock their primes into building something with no real latitude to make changes.
Mhm.
Where is it falling apart?
There's not a simple answer to that because there's just so many things you can talk about. Okay, so I'll mention a few things, and the list could be made much, much, much longer. Okay, you need a multi-event series to cover that, and you'd probably have to get opinions from a whole bunch of different people. One big problem is that things go too slow. And the whole process is too slow. It starts with bureaucracy. There are tons of regulations and bureaucracy. And that's one reason why the White House and the and is forcing some changes to get rid of some of the bureaucracy and to really open up channels that would be much, much faster. There has been an extreme focus on reducing risk. Okay? If you have an extreme risk reduction type of mentality, you cannot innovate. It is completely incompatible. And so that is something that is so deeply ingrained in the DoD or Department of War, however you want to call it now. And that's going to be very, very, very hard to change. And Hegseth is trying to change that, right? So from the top down, they understand, they know that America is way behind the modernization strategies. And something that is horrifying is one of the most influential books for the DoD is The Kill Chain by Christian Brose. And in that book, he was a top aide to John McCain. So, he's spent his life in defense at the highest levels, talking with everybody, right? And one of the things he shares in that book, so this is public information, is that the U.S. has done a lot of wargaming simulations if we ever get into a conflict with China. And we lose 100% of the time. It's because what we have does not match what we need for great power competition. It's completely mismatched. It's matched to the wars in the Middle East. It's matched to the counterterrorism war. It is completely different what we need now. And so everything needs to be replaced, or tons of things need to be replaced. And there's a lot of new capabilities that need to be created from scratch. Hence Space Force. Space is the new frontier, and it's something that is going to really change the game. There's going to be a lot of investment in space. And so a lot of innovation that needs to happen. And there's no way it's going to happen without transforming the primes and their subcontractors to have a ton more product management talent. We're not going to solve this by just funding Silicon Valley startups.
So it's not just within defense itself and the DoD that needs to be funding these new talents. Primes and contractors also need to do it. It sounds like they might be a little bit behind the game as well.
Yes, they're way, 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 way behind the game. So they've gotten lots of training from PMI in project management. And it doesn't work well. Project management does not work well for a highly complex software with a bunch of development teams. Okay, so that's just, there's enough history and proof of that. So yeah, there needs to be a real shift in the talent base of the defense industrial base. Yeah, and the reason why it fails is because of the requirements gap. Okay. So something that happened in the Agile world is I'd been serving as an advisor to a couple of the board members of Agile Alliance. And then last year, they surprised everybody in the Agile Alliance that they were getting basically acquired basically by PMI. And there were so many people on the Agile side that just couldn't believe it. and people putting up memes like, it's official now. The rebellion has joined the empire, the evil empire, And so there's been a lot of animosity of Agile towards project managers and I can tell you why. It's because it has not been successful in modern, large, complex software developments. And so there's enough of that pain and knowledge that fuels that animosity or in that lack of acceptance. But on the PMI side, I'm sure that they don't realize why there's that negative rub, because they're like, we know we're successful. Because PMI addresses all kinds of projects, not just software. And on the large scale of things, CEOs around the world of various industries really trust PMI because they teach really effective project management. And so when you don't have huge requirements gaps all the time, when you have situations where those requirements gaps are actually small or very manageable, and the biggest thing is coordinating a whole bunch of people to execute a mountain of work efficiently, PMI's training shines. And many, many industries are like that. Most industries are like that. It's software that's not. And so that's the disconnect of why the development world has really does not like the project management world, and also why the product management world, the product management thinkers, some of them really dislike the project management world, because it leads to what Mark King calls the feature factory. Okay, and so in the product management world, people talk about, oh yeah, feature factory companies. And it's always in a very negative, derogatory way, all right? Because what they're trying to say is that we know tons of failure cases where we've been part of companies and it's been frustrating that we have not gotten results, and we've been getting better results with product management. And so that's why there's kind of a rift between the product world and the project world. But truth be told is that project management is actually a resounding success in most cases because most industries don't have this problem. But yeah, I want to talk with PMI thought leaders to help them to have a more open mind of how to address software projects, like large, complex software projects, because they need to adjust. They need to be more open-minded.
This is a great lead-in to what you're doing with Edensoft Labs. You mentioned tech debt earlier in the conversation. So
yeah,
let's talk a little bit about what you're doing with Edensoft Labs to address some of these problems.
Okay. Yeah, I think that when it comes to having better success on large, complex software developments, we've talked a lot about the product management side of things and how much more talent's needed there. The other side of things is, now let's talk about engineering. On the engineering side, if you're building something large and complex, you need to be sure that you're cultivating the engineering talent that can really build and architect things at that scale that you need. And the larger, more complex thing that you're making, the higher level of software craftsmanship that you need. And when I'm talking about architects, I'm not talking about people with the title architect that are systems engineers and they're not deep software people. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that have very, very strong software chops, but they can design large systems with millions of lines of code, and this thing can come out and really nail the quality attributes, the performance, the security, the scalability, whatever you need, all the abilities that you need for that to be a great product. They can nail that while also making the code understandable and maintainable because the code base has conceptual integrity. And so that is something that is a super, 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 super rare skill. And the reason why it's super rare is because the companies employing engineers have not really been looking and requiring that kind of growth. So there's very few people like that and they tend to be sucked up by a very small number of startups that know those people and know that if they get those kind of people as a co-founder, that they're going to win. And so I think it was Mark Andreessen, I think it was him that said that when he's looking at a startup, that they need to have a great product manager or it's a no-go. And then they also need a great architect. All right. And so those two things. Now, if he sees those two things, he might be really interested in investing. Even if they don't have a really mature product idea that has clear product market fit. Because he knows if he has those two things, they might be able to figure it out. Even if their first idea that they bring to him isn't that great. All right. Because they have the skills, the core skills necessary to create something from scratch once they discover an opportunity. Now, those are the two things that he's been looking for. And a lot of people that admire that statement. So this is not a secret. This is something that people in the startup world have been talking about a long time. I'm going to add a third thing. Okay. That third thing that you need is once you have your engineering team, you need that engineering team collectively to have strong craftsmanship, to be able to create code that produces all the functions you want, that gives you all the quality attributes that you need, all the performance you need, all the scalability, all the security, all the other abilities, and that they can create code that is much more of an asset than a liability, that they don't create tons of tech debt that ends up really killing your innovation and agility later. So that's something that is extremely rare. And it's because the educational system and the corporations that employ engineers have not looked for, measured, and rewarded that skill.
And you're, in part, filling some of those gaps to be able to recognize that, and also to add some, I don't want to call them constraints, but to enforce best practices, right?
Yes. Yeah, I would say enforce best practices. I've enforced best practices on all my product teams at the engineering level, but I've also provided them with ample materials and actionable ways to improve their craftsmanship. And so every engineer can grow every year, and I'd like to see that happen, especially in the defense industrial base. This is something where the stakes have never been higher for America's defense, freedom, and ability to thrive. And so we're really at a critical point here. And now that the debt has gotten so high, in the defense world, you're going to have to do much more with less. You're going to have to accomplish much more modernization with less money and less time.
And more risk, right?
Yeah.
Because now we have this huge amount of tech debt. In order to accelerate, it's going to be a lot more risk than if we were taking small risks along the way, I'd imagine.
Yeah. And getting back to your AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. You asked about AI. Where AI falls into this is AI in the hands of a novice will create tech debt so quickly. And a lot of people don't know that. They don't know that when they go to Bolt or Lovable and they go through successive prompts. All right, here's my prompt. Create this for me. That's not quite right. Change this. Change that. Now tweak this. Now take that. Now add this. Now add that. No, change that. No, back that out. Every time you do that, it's probably adding more tech debt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not like going back and like taking a look at the whole code base and like, oh, now that you changed your mind on that, or that I misinterpreted you and I got to redo this, I'm going to do everything from scratch and make sure that the whole code base looks great. It doesn't even have the knowledge to do that. AI does not have the expertise to do that because it's been trained on a ton of code out there in open source that has tons of tech debt. So you can't get it to do it by just telling it to make something. And so what I'm telling you here is going to be so common knowledge within 2 years. people are not raising the alarm of what I just told you because they don't have enough experience to have figured this out.
Exactly.
They haven't been using it enough. Okay.
It's what you see is what you get, right? MySpace, I remember the story of MySpace as it came to this, right? As they were growing and scaling, MySpace was built, somebody's going to roast me for this. I think it was built on Adobe Cold Fusion. Was that what it was? It was a coding platform back in the day. There was also Dreamweaver. And they got to a point as they were scaling and the platform couldn't handle it anymore because the tech debt was huge. They would have had to start from scratch.
Yes. That's why Andreessen and other smart VCs are like, okay, startup. First, you've convinced me that you have a good product manager. Okay, great. Where's your architect? It's like, oh, I haven't found one yet. I'm still interviewing. No, thanks. No, thanks. Come back later maybe when you have that, but we're going to vet that you have a great software architect.
Yeah.
And they're right. Because you need both. You need both. And they're so rare. They're so rare. So AI is making, I'd say, probably 80% of entry-level coding tasks worth $20 a month. Okay. But when it comes to having careers as an engineer, you could still have it. But you better learn how to craft things at scale. You better learn how to create highly maintainable architectures at scale. You better learn how to create incredibly well documented code that has everything in there that anyone needs to maintain it, because that's what's going to be needed not only by the humans, but by the AIs that are going to read your code. Okay? So code documentation is more important than ever. And the human skills of how to create great documentation in code is more important than ever in the age of AI. Because you're going to have so much more code, and you want to use AI to help you in the future. That AI will not have all the context it needs if you, as the human, are not putting all that hidden context into the code. And I wrote a very long article on this, where I talk about the nine priorities of code documentation that I've required from all my engineers the last 20 years. And we do use AI to do documentation, but here's the kicker. It only helps with the simplest stuff. So it's still helpful. It saves you time. But most of the burden of good code documentation is in the human's hands. And humans need to gain the skills to know how to do the right things.
I think as you were talking, I came up with a new term. AI is shepherding in the next generation of SaaS, slop at scale.
That's good.
Let's use it. Let's use it for everybody. It was coined here, slop at scale. It's so fast, and people are building so fast, and they have no idea what they're getting at. And, for experimentation, I get it, right? Early experimentation when you're doing your minimums, right? Your minimum lovable product, viable product, feasible product, marketable. Like, I get it, right? Because you're going to throw that away. But once you get into complex code that has to go to production, what was it? Was it Replit that the person was coding and it's like, oh, I deleted your production database. Sorry.
Yeah. All the tests passed then.
What the test passed? Easiest way to pass your tests is to delete them all.
Yeah, exactly.
Done.
Exactly.
No, this has been a great conversation. I think we covered a lot here. We're going to link a lot of resources in the comments because this is really important. I think you've given a good pathway to help people get started and to start expanding their core knowledge and skill set. So with that, thank you very much for joining. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation. We should write an article around slop at scale and
Let's do it.
go from there. Thank you
Let's
so
do it.
much.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Talk to you later.